There we go.
Welcome to People Who Teach, a podcast about the habits, beliefs, and ideas of real people who teach. My name is Brian Seppi, one of the co-hosts here alongside my talented colleague, Mr. Andrew Stella. We are here today with a very special guest, and I will let Andrew unpack this one because it has a unique tie to Andrew and his path to education and what he's all about. So, Andrew, take us away.
Yeah, let's do this. So, this is one of the first guests that I have brought on. That we had Tyler last week. It was a great podcast. If you guys haven't checked it out, and Scott he was my old teacher. He was my teacher when I was in 10th grade. I remember at the high school, and he was one of those teachers who I always remembered. And we have those teachers as we move through. And, Brian, we've talked about that girl that you had as a student who invited you to her graduation as she went through. And Scott Martin is one of the teachers that I remember as having an impact on me as a student and me as a teacher too. So Scott and I have stayed in contact, and now I was working in the city of Buffalo for a number of years, and then I came back and I'm actually teaching at my old elementary school, which is in the same district that Scott was the teacher in, which he took over as a principal. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. So a lot of backstory there, Brian.
I'll tell you, it's a cool way to start, though. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm just trying to put my head around the idea of being in the same room of the person that, sort of influenced me, and having the chance to sort of, riff with him or get into this conversation with him is just got to be a cool little experience, I guess, for you and probably for him as well. So we'll let Scott, a little bit about you, Scott. What are you all about? How did you get to where you are today? What experiences did you have in education? And just bring us up to speed with your bio.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate you guys having me on. It's obviously, you're absolutely correct. It's rewarding to spend some time in this capacity with Andrew as well. And feel very fortunate to be able to spend some time, with you guys this evening. My story is simple yet somewhat complex. I was my brother. We lived in the Sweet Home community. My brother was on the same wrestling team with Andrew. They were teammates in high school. And there was a day my brother left his science binder at home on the kitchen table. I was a senior in college, just finishing up. And I ran it up to the high school to drop it off for him. And I had turned the corner to go to the main office, and I bumped into another teacher. There was a high school global studies teacher. And he asked me where I was going. And I said, I'm dropping this off for my brother. And we got into this conversation. Where do you go to school? I, explained that I was getting ready to student teach. And he said, well, I'm looking for a student teacher actually next spring. And I said, oh, cool. So, we exchanged numbers. I shared that with the college I was attending. And about 3 months later, I wound up student teaching at Sweet Home High School, which Randall was a student. And then I finished up my student teaching in May and was hired in June and wound up teaching there for, 15, 16 years. Then went into administration and wound up serving as a teacher on special assignment for a few short years, and then became high school principal, where I served my last 3 years. And then after 21 years in the same building, moved on to a new journey and a little bit different venture just about a year ago today, this past February.
Congratulations. And we're going to get a little bit more into that in a little bit here.
See, and you think how everyone got started. I feel like everyone in teaching has this kind of like weird story that they kind of like you got weaved into it somehow, or I don't know. It's pretty crazy. Like when you were teaching, we talk about this once in a while, and like, what were your greatest strengths as an educator? I mean, I'm teaching. Brian does a lot with K through 5. I taught pre-K, first grade, and third grade. You're talking about high school. Like, what was your greatest strength when you were a secondary teacher?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that goes into it. I was right away also into coaching. Right, I coached a couple of sports, and when you're involved in extracurricular activities and you have those extended relationships with the students and the families, beyond just the classroom, it certainly gives you a little bit different kind of leverage, right? And a little bit different kind of relationship with the kids. But I always thought that one of the most important uh, things that the secondary teachers had to keep in mind, or always had to be cognizant of, was those kids are a little bit older and a little savvier, right? And you always got to be on your toes, because once you lose a kid or a few kids, it's tough to get them back. And so the one thing that I always thought was critical was to try to have those relationships with the kids in more capacity than just student to teacher, right? Whether it was a coach, or you ran an activity or a club, or you put the extra time in, to make sure that they knew that you cared, right? I remember early on, always going out of my way to meet the kids at the door, but to recognize the kids and actually go out of my way to make sure that the kids were more popular or more well known, saw me welcoming every kid, the kids that were quieter, the kids that didn't talk as much, to let them know that when they came into this space, that yes, it was going to be enjoyable, and yes, we were going to make the most of it, but that everybody was on a level playing field. And kids are very, 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 very in tune, right? And they are, they're aware of their surroundings and what's going on, and they know, um, you know, uh, how you're running your class, and they respect when everybody is considered equal in that space. And so, the one thing that I thought was important was to make sure that all kids felt that way, when they walked in, and felt a part of whatever was going to happen was for everyone.
I love what you said there, and the idea that, like, I'm going to meet every kid at the door, and they're going to be seen, they're going to be heard, and they're going to be valued, right? Like, and treating everybody as if they're part of Mr. Martin's room, right? They're seen, they're heard, they're valued. They walk into this culture of your space. I guess one question I have, I mean, obviously there's tough days in those relationships. Kids have off days, you have off days. When you're doing that and you're building through those relationships, were you able to, and I guess here's my curiosity with this question. I think Andrew and I can see it pretty visibly, maybe in the K-5 world. And there's always going to be kids that you can't pick out that are having those off days. But I guess at your level, that secondary level, it feels even more polarizing in the sense that there's a little bit of peer pressure. There's peers. You're dealing with different things. So when a kid has an off day there, is it necessarily you coming in to sort of recognize that, or did kids feel welcomed enough to come to you with their issues or something they were having troubles with, or was it a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, one of the things that I was always preaching, and I still to this day believe in, whether it was myself as the instructor, whether it was a student that was participating in a lesson, a co-teacher, right? The most important lesson in education is always the next one, right? Because when you have a great day, like the next day, you got to follow it up and find a way to be better. And when you have an off day, that next day becomes equally as important, right? And the same thing for the kids, right? You know how they are. They come in one day, they're on top of the mountain. The next day, the sky is falling. And it's an array of reasons that cause that for them, right? But that's part of the social emotional growth piece from second and third grade to senior year in high school, right? It doesn't change. The problems just, go from, maybe being in the cafeteria or being at home to being, on a cell phone or in a group chat. And, the thing that was important was everybody's entitled to have their bad days, right? You just hit the nail on the head, right? Teachers have great days. They have days they're off, right? But the important thing for me was to make sure that everybody was focused on the next day, right? And building on, the previous day's work, good or bad.
Love that.
Talk a little bit about, you were in the same building, right, for 21 years. So like going from being a teacher, seeing all these kids, and then you said you were a teacher on special assignment for 3?
Yeah, for about 3 years. Yep.
And then you went to the administrator of that school. Can you just take us through like that? Like I as an educator, Brian and I taught at Westminster and Buffalo, and like that was such a community, and I feel like Sweet Home it's a real community, and you really invest in the kids and the teachers and the space and the school and the area. So talk to us a little bit about like what were the advantages of being in that school, right, the whole time, and then moving up as an administrator, like when you took over, like how was that, and like were there any disadvantages? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be both, right, depending on how things go for you over that that stretch of time. But the thing that I always remember, even from when I was 22 years old and first got going, is every single opportunity I had to meet with an administrator, an AP, another teacher, assistant soup, athletic director, right, wrong, or different, I was always evaluating what they were doing and evaluating their job in a way that I was learning equally as much as what I thought I could take from them to better myself and what I would leave, right? Like what works for them, what doesn't work for them, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. And I was very fortunate to work with a number of phenomenal instructors and teachers, some unbelievable coaches that are in the West New York Coaching Hall of Fame, administrators. My first job in administration as the TOSA was they actually created a position for me that I moved out of the classroom to step into, and I worked under, believe it or not, my principal at the time is Andrew's current principal. Another amazing relationship and opportunity to learn the ropes, and so I had a really good opportunity to kind of study a lot of people being in one place for that long, because those doors revolve, right? The administration or the administrative tenure is generally not a lengthy one. It's not a 20-year career in one building. It's 2-3 years here, 2-3 years there, right? And so I had a chance to work with a number of different administrators, and and really learn equally as much from them as I did from the teaching staff. But in this particular case, it certainly was an advantage because of the situation that I stepped into. The timing of when I literally went to bed on a Tuesday, and I was still in the Teachers Association, was a teacher. On Wednesday morning, I was the athletic director, and then Friday morning, I was the high school principal. And that to go on that track without necessarily having to be an assistant principal for 2 or 3 years or serve in some other roles is unique. But what afforded me that opportunity was, my relationships with the people, and you don't get those relationships, in 2 or 3 years. There's not many people that their first day on the job as a high school principal, know every custodian, know who to go, every clerical worker, know what every door leads to, what all the keys open, and where to find, a lot of the answers that you need, because so much of what you need comes from I say fringe, they're not in a derogatory, but those fringe employees that are not teachers and are not administrators, right? People that work in the cafeteria, the people that drive the bus, the people that, are in the custodial office, the administrative assistants. I mean, they hold so many answers and so many of the keys to success. It's unbelievable. And so in this case, having that longevity in that position, for me, paid great dividends. In fact, I often thought about, my first 2-3 years as I watched some of my peers that I had known from the area take administrative jobs, or folks that came into our district from other districts and took different positions. I often thought about, what my approach would be, because I never had to do it, right? Like if I was all of a sudden up and be the, principal of Orchard Park High School or the principal of South Park, right? Like, what strategy would I, deploy to start to begin to, to entrench myself and really the people. And if anything about schools, that the power of success lies within the teachers, right? The teachers are what make everything go, and for good reason. And that was one thing that, that I really had the fortunate experience of stepping into a job where, I had 200 people that report to me, 110 of them were instructors, but I knew every one of them, right? And I had known every one of them for, a decade or two. So it certainly paid dividends when it came to being able to get right to the the heart of the job, which in this case was trying to make a pretty drastic turnaround from where we were to where we wanted to go.
I have to pause for just a second because my mind is still stuck on one thing you said, and it's a little blown. Okay, so we have to back it up. You went from teacher in a building to an athletic director to a principal by all in a week is what you described. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So a couple things. One, that speaks volumes of your leadership, your relationships with the people, as you mentioned. Like, undoubtedly, that speaks volumes about you, right? So, like, kudos to you for being able to weather that, I think, in some ways, because I don't know that if my job changed 3 times in a week at that level. Now, if you moved me from, say, I don't know, I was a 2nd grade teacher on a Monday, we moved me to a 3rd grade teacher on a Tuesday, and then all of a sudden I was teaching 4th grade on a Friday. Okay, there are problems, right? But I think I could navigate those waters probably a little bit more coolly. But what you described were 3 completely different roles and sort of identities that you had to walk in a week. Now, again, that speaks volumes to you, but like, what was that transition? Like, how polarizing was that transition that week? I mean, how did you deal with that? Because again, you're being called on to step into these roles because you have the intangibles that people sought, right? Like, you had the relationships, you had the commitment to learn, you obviously have a humble leadership approach. Like, those are evident just in hearing you talk. Like, do you go home at 4:00 and you're like, all right, I'm going to do this, that, and the other, or were you up all night? I mean, how did that work all that week?
Rightfully so, even with the longevity that I had in the district, our district was always big believers in process, right? Like, they never handed jobs out. So, despite the fact that I was, in the district and had coached the teams that I'd coached for as long as I did, even when it came time for the athletic director position, there was a process in place, there was interviews, there was other candidates, right? And so, in the spring, I was going through that process under the assumption, knowing that our current AD was retiring, that was going to be, my first move. And after being in the classroom for 15 years, you got to put some thought to it because, every administrator I had spoken to along the way, they all echoed the same sentiments. And that's that each move you make through administration, you get further from the kids, right? It becomes more about adults and more about issues within the school and operational type things. But in the success or failure, it's more global, right? It's a community, it's an organization, it's not a room, right? And so it's like anything else. There's opportunity cost. You get the good with the bad, right? And so I had thought very carefully about this move of being away from the part of the job that I had grown to love the most, which was the kids. They for 15 years, they crack you up, right? It's why you do it. For those days that you sit on your desk, on a student desk, and you put your feet up on the chair and you're in the front of the classroom and the kids are hanging on every word because you're talking about something that by all rights they probably should care less about, but you found a way to make it, that it's going to be something that is of interest. And to walk away from that and to be worried about first aid and CPR and coaching certifications and rescheduling events. I thought long and hard about it, but I felt I was ready for some new challenges, and the TOSA had given me a taste of that world, and so I went through the process. I had found out that I would be the recommendation of the Board of Education. Went to the board meeting. They approved it unanimously. So I found out that I was in the position, came home, sat down with my wife, told her, that it looked like it had gone well. And this was actually after the interview. And the meeting with the superintendent went well. I'm going to the board. She's very supportive. So then go to the board, meeting happens, come home, take my suit off, go to bed, wake up next day. I walk back into the high school, and I was kind of cutting through one of the offices, maybe like, 8:30, 8:45, and a bunch of teachers are congratulating me. Hey, saw your board minutes, congratulations. And I had, gotten about 5 to 10 steps down the one aisleway in the office, and my phone rings, and it's the superintendent. And so I made a joke in front of the teachers. I'm like, oh man, I'm on the job for an hour and a half and here he is calling me already, right? So I pick up the phone and he's like, I need to see you in my office. I'm like, oh geez, I haven't even started yet, because even though you're appointed, it's the end of June. You don't start till July 1, right? So, I walk out of the office and I head down to the superintendent's office and walk in, and he just said, can you sit down for a second? And I said, okay. And he's like, you understand that the high school is the single most important job in the district, right? And I said, sure. And he's like, I need you to take a leave of absence from athletic director. And, I said, okay. He's like, we need someone to start the school year. I need to give you the summer to do some planning. And, I always would have done whatever they had asked, right? I'd been there, as you guys mentioned, for a long time. I knew these people well. Certainly appreciated that they felt that I was the right person for the job. But I did, I remember saying like, look at, happy to do that, right? Seems like it would be, if that's what you're asking me, that's what needs to be done. I'm happy to do it. But I think I want to be very upfront that, if you're asking me to be the principal of the high school, I probably can't do it. But if you're asking me to coach 1,000 kids and 200 adults, I'm happy to give it a shot, right? And it was also on an interim basis, right? Because it was something that was designed to be an interim to get through the fall while they do a search, and then I go back to AD, and we move on. My superintendent was super supportive, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. And so I walked out of there, came home, sat my wife down, and said, I'm no longer the athletic director. And, she thought I screwed up already, but and then there was about a week left in the school year, and then July 1st assembled the team and started putting a plan together to try to really move our school and change trajectories and in my mind not really move forward but get back to who we were, which is the school that Andrew went to, right? Very tight-knit community, people that cared about each other, a lot of good character, a lot of toughness in the community, people that got through adversity and challenging times. And that's what we set out to start doing. And then the school year started, and by like Columbus Day, the superintendent came to me and said that they were no longer interested in me being the athletic director, and that this was my job, and I never really got a chance to go back. And then it was 3 years went by faster than you could ever imagine.
That's an amazing story, and kudos to the superintendent for being able to recognize the talent of their staff and the people they have on their campuses. Because as you mentioned, like just that little subtle piece that you put in there, which is if you're asking me to go up there and coach adults and X number of kids, I'm all in for that. And that commitment to saying like, look, I'm not saying I have this thing figured out, but if you want me to go learn alongside people and find ways to motivate and coach and nudge, I'm your guy for that. That was just a really terrific story. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, our school's done a great job of cultivating leadership from within. We probably have about 5 or 6 administrators that are from within the district. Now, whether they went off on their own and came back or they came right through the pipeline, each one has a little bit different story, but they're probably up to about 3 or 4 administrators that, had come through the system. And, and that was, certainly, and at that point I worked with the superintendent for, a number of years. I wouldn't say we were super close, but we had gotten close over the years. And then certainly once I moved into this role, we became very close and worked alongside each other. But, I remember even during the conversation, saying that I almost felt that under the circumstances that I didn't even want the title of principal, like that I would stay a teacher or stay a TOSA, but I'll do the job. And, that didn't necessarily fly because beds forms and somebody has to be, according to the state, actually hold a certificate and be responsible for the building and that. But we had the conversation for a few seconds. And one of the things that was certainly most important to me was, to make that move from, being with your peers for that long to being in the position of leadership. One of the key pieces or attributes to me that I felt were absolutely necessary was this idea that we were working alongside each other. No one's working for anybody, right? We're working together. And, the rest, played out pretty good over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Like, just what you said there. I also, I feel like on People Who Teach, we have like a theme going on. And I feel like one of the themes we have is it's all about relationships, being seen, being valued, being heard. And that's what good educators do, effective educators do. And when I hear you talk, I think a lot about being the change, changing trajectories. And I'm going to go back on a past experience that I had with you. So here I am, I'm in 10th grade. I'm just, not too much of a punk, but yeah, a punk. I'm in 10th grade. And I step into your room, and the first day, I think it was only your second year teaching, and you said, I don't want to give you grades. I want to have conversations with you. I want open dialogue. And I think everyone in that class, and these are all my classmates who I've been with for years, we all just looked at each other like, what did he just say? Like that's never happened. And that was about 20 years ago. And that was just being the change, going against the norm. Can you just talk a little bit about that philosophy, how that has carried you in each position you've held, like being the change, kind of like, how can I put this? Just doing things outside of the box that we as educators know those are the things we have to do to engage students and get kids to learn. And it just comes so natural to you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I per se change anything or was the root of the change. I think that the key in the position of leadership is it's really all about your ability to inspire the conduct of others. Right? They make the change, and the single most important thing in those roles is the ability to influence human behavior. Right? Whether it's adults or kids or whoever it may be, in the moment, kids are ready to square up and get into a conflict, and you're able to diffuse it. Right? Parent comes in, they're upset about something, or there's an emotional experience for a family. When we, in the short time, even in the principal role, those 3 years, I mean, we had families that were experienced everything from sudden death to losing everything they own in a house fire to everybody's story is different, right? Could go on with the challenges that people face, but the ability to influence those situations and influence the behavior of people and how they handle what's thrown their way is what ultimately leads to change. And one of the things that I've always subscribed to, whether I was a teacher and quite honestly, in my second year, like everybody else, I probably had no idea what I was doing, right? I was trying to figure it out myself. You're worried about getting through grad school and getting tenure and trying to figure out where you're supposed to park your car still, right? But inside of us, we have this core belief of that we try to portray as teachers. And one of the things that I found interesting is I've always been a believer in making a way, right? Like if you can't necessarily find it, you make it. And one of the things in schools that's very tough, right? Whether it's in a leadership role or you're in a instructional role, is that by the very nature of schools, in many cases, looking like they did today, like they did previously. Like think about how many teachers that they teach the way that they were taught because they think back to that teacher that inspired them, or they teach the way they were taught and they value those things because that's what they knew in school, right? And then that pattern repeats itself. And so one of the things that is interesting is the very nature of schools can tend to be at times more about people telling you why things can't be done instead of how they can. Right? Oh, you can't do that because, right? It's a union issue, or we can't do that because the families, we can't do that because of the board or because of the school day or the bell or the course or the exam, right? There's always something for why it seems easy to say that we can't do it a certain way. And the thing that I always found to be, a game changer is, this is what we want to do or where we want to get to. Let's not think about all the reasons why we can't do it. Let's think about what we got to do to actually make it happen, right? To make a way. And so, some of those things you're talking about, early on, were just, the idea that I knew that as a student, my experience in school was awful. Like I remember very little of it. The bit I remember, I didn't care for. I was never a great academic student. No one inspired me. You went to school, bells rang, you moved from place to place to get out of there to go home and, play football or hockey in the street or do whatever. And, the one thing that I knew early on was that the days where the class seemed most engaged is when we were sharing in some sort of experience together that was making the content or the instructional goals of the day, relevant to their lives and gave them a reason to give a damn about what was going on. And so, I think a lot of the change then that I was fortunate enough to be a part of that was, really the byproduct and result of the work of those that I was working with or leading at the time. That, again, was more, I think, because of some of maybe the motivation or some of the belief that, hey, if this is what we decide we want to do, let's go make a plan and do it. And it was the folks, whether the kids in my class, the athletes on my team, the adults in my building, it was those folks that made it happen. And I think I was just very fortunate and lucky enough to work with some great people.
And I also think so. I think this is a good time to kind of talk about your new venture too. Is you want to give teachers these tools with this new platform that you're using. You created this platform. I want you to talk a little bit about ThinkTech and what's your mission for this educational platform. Like when I think about using it, I think about students connecting, right? And teachers using these instructional tools to make a serious impact on content and student learning. So can you just talk a little bit about like what ThinkTech is, how you kind of got into it, what's your mission for this this platform, and just kind of talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, so probably right around the same time that I was getting into the administration role, I had my wife and I gave birth to our first child, my son. Some complications during the delivery left him with some injuries, and he had, was missing some milestones and had some early challenges. 2.5 years in. And I was never a believer in tech or in tech integration. I was, kids need more reading, more writing. They need more of the sound principles of what makes a good student. And our school had gone one-to-one and hand out these iPads, and I wanted no part of it as a teacher. But I did start using some of the applications and different features to try to help my son, who was, like I said, personally struggling with meeting some of the early milestones of early childhood, like even before pre-K. And I, kicked around the idea of trying to get something off the ground. Probably some of you are like doing some professional development and stuff with some different folks I had worked with. But in my head, I had this. I had started taking these notes, and it's actually sitting behind me. I was just looking the other day from when I was taking notes and journaling about my son's experience and how I saw the technology working. And I approached, long story short, I wound up approaching a agency downtown in the Innovation Center that I was linked up with to kind of pitch them my idea I had for this application. It was one app at the time, and wanted to get some feedback around if it was something they could bring to life. And after a couple of meetings, they said that they could. I turned over a bunch of notes and sketches and things, and then went home, sat down with my wife, told her that I was going to empty our bank account to build a digital product that we had no idea that was going to work or not work, and started down this path of trying to bring that to life, and then that just kept evolving into kept having more ideas and 2 apps and 3 apps, and along the way, I think the first time I asked some people to join me, there was 4 or 5 people asked to meet me at Spot Coffee, and tried to bring some other people in and see if they had interest, because I certainly didn't think it was something I could do by myself. I thought there was other skill sets around me that could help. And then over the next 3-4 years, this other story happened where I moved into different positions within the school district and had an opportunity to get an MVP in my hands and to have teachers actually using it in the classroom and seeing if it worked and get feedback from what they would like to see different and how it could be better. And believe it or not, it's been almost 5 years since I started down that path, and plenty of people have come in and out and helped and been there, then they're not there, and it's a very challenging road to bring something like this to life. And it's been a daunting task because of the pandemic, right? It's really set things back. That was ultimately why I decided to leave education, is I thought that this thing was in a position and primed and ready to go. And I had approached and I was working with a couple of school districts and felt that it was time that if I was going to make this work, I was going to have to step away from the responsibilities of a big job like that and focus solely on this. Unfortunately, my last day on the job as a principal was probably 3 weeks or 2 weeks before the pandemic. And, that just really changed everything because school's entire focus shifted to transportation and masks and PPE and plastic barriers and lunch and teachers and staffing. And, the last thing in the world that any school was thinking about the last year from a leadership standpoint was teaching, right? And that's, really a compliment to the resiliency of teachers, right? Like, I think in the back of their head, they they know teachers will figure this out, right? At the end of the day, teachers are not going to let their kids down. They'll find what's out there. They'll find the tools that we have. They will adapt. They'll be flexible, and they'll make this happen. And so we have to focus energies on keeping people safe. And so, to try to launch an instructional technology in March of 2020 was probably the worst possible thing on the planet Earth to try to do. So when that happened, I kind of had to retool and revisit what we were offering and what I thought school would look like after this pandemic, and then try to make some adjustments to what we're offering so that we can be positioned to be the best tool on the market for post-pandemic. And so that's what I've been doing the last year, is rather than run out there and buy ads and jam this down everybody's throat and run around and try to bring awareness, I kind of took a back seat and said, I'm going to start developing the features and the functionality so that as this thing ends, we are in position to be, hopefully the very best tool out there to foster interactions, connectivity in the classroom. And the thing that I remember is very much like you guys probably planned, your different podcast episodes, or the way that you see organizations operate. You have individuals that come together and they donate their different ideas and thoughts to each other. They brainstorm, they put stuff up on a whiteboard, they put stickies on a wall, right? They get ideas out there. And then once those ideas are out there, they begin to discuss, talk, interact with those ideas, and then make revisions, right? Like, I like this, I like that. Oh, that was a great idea by Andrew. Let's take that. But I think that with, Brian's is a great mix. And we come up with this solution, and then we make a plan, and then we reflect on it, and we go and we do it, right? But there's very few classrooms that you walk in that model that same experience that is the real world, right? And so our entire platform is designed to create equity across the board by trying to end the one thing that I began to feel was a problem my last year as an administrator, and that was, whether it's a result of social media or technology in terms of phones or interest of kids. The one thing that I noticed that I felt very strongly about the last year or two was there was becoming this great divide. There was becoming kids that were quiet and kids that were loud, right? Kids that would be out there, they're vocal in the halls, they're up and down, they're making noise, right? They're in that clique. And then kids that just would go about their business and you wouldn't know they exist if you didn't stop them and force them to speak. And it was working its way down to the grade levels. And, as I began to observe more and more classes, it became evident that, every class has 4 or 5 kids that do a lot of talking and 15 kids that don't do a whole lot of talking, right? And when you're the teacher and you're in the moment, you're busting your tail to keep up and to work with kids and to, offer, additional supports and try to close, misconceptions and gaps. But at the end of the day, let's think about what teachers are charged with, right? They're charged with one of the most impossible tasks of all time. To have a room full of 25 kids, which most people wouldn't be able to engage 25 people at one time. But now you have, 3 kids that probably shouldn't have really moved on to this grade level. You have 5 kids that, really should, that this is, they're way beyond this. They should be in an advanced course, or they should be in a different track. You have kids that might struggle with this content, but they're great students otherwise. A host of social emotional problems. They're all sitting in front of you, and it's like, let's go get everybody on the same page and keep them going. And that's just not practical. And that's where I think the technology offers some things that are unique, that I didn't believe in when I was, 30 years old, but I certainly believe in now through my own experience with my son, and then the process of bringing this product to life. And that's, the teachers have these incredible abilities, right? So many things that they can do that are unbelievable. And the tried and true lesson plans that they've created over the years, they're golden. They work. They're great. What's changed is the ability to deliver those on so many different levels to so many different learners. And that's what technology affords. It doesn't afford a way to make teachers' lesson plans better. It affords a way to amplify the teacher so that their lesson plan can be provided or being given on full capacity, right? By collecting data from kids that they wouldn't be able to collect by themselves, by turning around instant information and comparing it to other students to show that 25% of the class had trouble 30 seconds ago, right? Those are the things that are irreplaceable. To give every kid a chance to donate their ideas and their thoughts to the learning space instantly, right? Not one kid raised their hand. I didn't get one idea from one kid or one idea from 5 kids. I got 10 ideas from 25 kids. I got 250 ideas in 14 seconds, right? Like that's not teaching. That's not, no one can do that. It's not possible. But what if we could develop tools that did that for the teacher, right? And allowed the teacher to maximize their impact on the kids that are in front of them. And so, one of the issues is that, I think our tool is a little bit ahead of its time, right? Like there's a lot of teachers that are still coming into that space. There's a lot of teachers that have embraced technology and that are probably even beyond that, right? But across the board, I think what we do differently is we give teachers flexible, simple, easy tools that they can use in a moment's notice that can change the course of the great lessons they've already created, and bring them to the next level by doing things that they would not be able to do regardless of ability. And we have a few, things that we're still evolving and we're trying to get better at, but across the board, I think that we have a really, really good platform that stacks up with the best tools on the market. But there's probably a lot less awareness around what we have because of the path that I chose to take, right? Like I chose not to take on investor funding, right? I wanted this to be organic, to be about teachers, to be about learning, to be free from influence from outside money. As soon as you take money from the investors, it becomes about making money and not about doing the right thing. And the other thing that's a cognizant decision that I made is, rather than take the traditional road of a startup and say, okay, let's get this out there. Let's get this out there. There's year 1. Let's try to get some more people. There's year 2. I had the luxury of being able to stay in a position where I was doing the testing. I was seeing it work. I was finding out what it needed and what was unnecessary. And I was doing that over 3 or 4 years, so that by the end, I would have something. It's a little bit of like Field of Dreams, right? Like I subscribe to this idea of, if I build it, they will come, as opposed to I'm going to build this slowly while people give me feedback and tell me what they need. I don't really know anybody to tell me what people need. Like I feel like I know pretty well what's missing and what teachers need and what they will resonate with. But it's certainly not the way a traditional startup goes, right? It's all about like getting out there, letting people see, becoming aware. And so what would typically at this stage be like, a minimal viable product or something that's in beta testing, like we really have something that stacks up against, the Nearpods, the Paradex of the world, the tools that are out there that are very well known and strong tools. It's just that we haven't had the chance to really fully launch. I mean, we're in, 3 or 4 school districts right now, but we probably have another, 50 in the pipeline that I think could easily close by September. But the pandemic has certainly thrown us behind a little bit. So in terms of operational, how the product works and what we do, I think we're, pretty close to the top of our game. Now it's a matter of finding out how we reach the masses in a time when it's very difficult to, teacher fatigue is a real thing. Student fatigue is a real thing. Right now, schools are struggling with trying to introduce new ideas. They're struggling with trying to keep people spirits elevated, just like the real world, just like the workplace is, just like everything we see in society right now. It's there's a lot of adversity and challenge to the day-to-day routine, and so we're kind of picking and choosing our timing to try to get out there and have a significant impact. And like I mentioned, we're pretty well embedded in Western New York. I think most districts at this point know about the product. We've been fortunate enough to have a couple of contracts with different BOCES across New York State so that schools can purchase it with their aid, right? That's a big validator for the schools, right? Like they know that they can not only get it, but they can save, they can use money that will be aidable on it, that make it so that it's more accessible. Whereas I'm super disappointed in how things shook out with the timing, I'm optimistic because I can see that what we have is different and that no one out there is really trying to do what we're trying to do. The other tools out there are making great ways to present or to engage kids in a singular function. Like we're the best game, we're the best quiz, we're the best presentation. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, we're the best teaching, and we're what teachers can use as they need or as they see fit to amplify what they're already doing, which is in most cases a phenomenal job.
I love that message. And just so we're clear for the people that will watch this, either or listen to it, could you just tell us where they can find your tool, website? And also I would love for you just to share just a quick example of a way that you see it working, maybe from a secondary standpoint, because that's both out of mine and Andrew's wheelhouse. How could you see secondary or middle school, upper elementary school teachers using this tool? I would love to hear that. Just first, where can people find it? Where can they link up? Where can they request a demo, right? That sort of, or pricing for the tool itself.
Yeah, sure. So anybody can go to our website, which is GoTHiNK.com. They can sign up for a free 30-day account. They get most of the functionality. There's a couple of high-end features that you don't get with free account, but certainly everything you would need to experience the tool and make an informed decision about purchasing is there. School districts, same thing. They can visit the site and they can request a demo right there on that site. And once you get into it and dig around there, once you sign up for a free account, you get onboarded into a sequence of emails. You get about 10 emails from us over the course of 2 weeks that give you, video tutorial libraries, access to our knowledge base, all kinds of tips and tricks about the tool, and how it can be utilized to help in the classroom. And so it's pretty straightforward. In terms of how it's used, there's probably one lesson that stands out that is probably the one day where I'm like, man, we got something here that was pretty cool. And I was a U.S. history teacher, so it kind of maybe I'm being biased, but one of the features, so in the tool, each tool has different response types. You can give quizzes and things like that, and you can create word clouds and you can poll and survey kids. But most of the tools are based on response type. Kids either classify or sort terms or images. They record audio, they record video, they answer open-ended questions, they draw or they mark up PDFs like a notability. Really anything you could possibly want to do is in there. And the tools are designed to be like Legos, right? Not that you have to make a lesson, but you have all these different Lego pieces that you can combine to build anything that you want as a teacher. Whether it's one task or many, it's just an opening, it's just an exit ticket, it's a whole lesson, it's a whole unit. You got a lot of flexibility. And so the one lesson that I was observing it, and I truly don't believe that the teacher was using it as part of the observation, but that's going to be a hard argument to make as the principal, that they didn't think there were some bonus points in there. But the lesson was awesome. I walked in, very difficult subject to teach. very relevant to what's going on right now. Early political parties, Hamilton and Jefferson, teaching the kids about the different views and how political parties started. George Washington's feelings about political parties, and there was a nice word cloud activity to start some brainstorming. There was some check for understandings and some open-ended questions. But I thought the coolest piece was the later half of the lesson was using a tool in our suite. It's about 8 applications in one suite, an app called Speak It, which is where kids create audio recordings, then donate those to a board where they can listen to each other's recordings. And the teacher uploads materials that are part of that task. And the teacher had uploaded recordings from the Hamilton musical of the cabinet battles. And the kids had recorded back their version of the cabinet battles to answer a prompt. And so when the kids were done, there was 15 different, they were in small groups recording this, their version of the next cabinet battle in the story of understanding, political parties in Hamilton and Jefferson. And I remember leaving the lesson and the kids were just starting to record those. And I got home at night and, obviously I have the master password. So I'm like, I got to get in this account and go see what these kids turned in. Right. So I logged in at about 10 o'clock at night and I started listening to them and, I almost had a tear in my eye and I was like, that is pretty damn cool, man, that a teacher was able to take this and to create an experience that was truly relevant, hip to the kids, right? They're rapping and they're it's bringing a little hip hop flair. All the kids are into it. They're writing their own lyrics. So many different things coming into play. I mean, you guys know, I don't need to explain it to you, but I certainly thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And so just to be clear, all of that was housed in this one platform where we started with this sort of anticipatory set of this sort, right? We sorted it. We took one lesson plan, we sorted it, and then we were able to check it with some understandings, right? I mean, your platform speaks my language in a way because I often get down to the verbs with people, especially when we're writing, these micro progressions to skills that students need at the elementary level. And so when I people are like, I think you wrote that chart before. And I'm like, well, yeah, because it's the same kind of thing. We're asking kids to stop, think, sketch, write, it's all the same stuff, right? So it's just different content. They may be doing it in nonfiction versus fiction. So anyway, so you took this teacher took this lesson and they were able to do all 3, I'll call them tasks, but they're not really tasks so much as they are ways to, like you said, amplify and engage the students in the lesson itself and the content itself. So they were able to first start off with this sort that's housed on the platform. And then they move into this check it, which is a little bit of a formative assessment to see how things are going in the lesson with these open-ended questions. And then they get into this speak it in the same platform under the same lesson. And again, you're not on an easy schedule with a bell system, right? You're at 42 minutes or whatever your time is up there. I say up there like it's some other place. You know what I mean? So this teacher was able to basically, by being in this one platform and not fumbling with tools, be in all of these different spaces and have access for kids where they knew the platform as well. And like you said, homework probably, if there was any at that point, was a little bit more engaging, right? You're writing some lyrics and you're recording something. What a cool story.
Yeah. And I will tell you too, I've been using this for remote learning. You guys know I'm 3rd grade remote. I use ThinkTech all the time, and it's really powerful because there's a lot of features in here that we don't have enough time to talk about all of them. We really don't. So I encourage you to definitely go check it out, see what it's all about. But I will tell you, I have 20 kids, and I will put them on that Speak It, and you can actually control their screens, and you can share responses and things like that. And there's so many tools within tools. Those are the main tools, but there's a lot of things you can do on here, whether you're remote or in person. You may use the tool a little differently, whichever one you actually are, but very engaging for students. And like Scott said, lots of data, lots of feedback, lots of lots of ways to, kind of move on from there or address things in the moment, get that feedback, which is so important.
Andrew, I was going to ask you, like, so on the back end of things, when you work with our younger students, what are you noticing on the back end? I mean, pretty intuitive in the sense that what you're getting is either fueling the next day and you mentioned a couple of times this idea of getting something in the moment. So I'm imagining you there with your device, walking around, well, you're remote now, but having your second device up. When you say the back end of things, what are you noticing there?
Some things that I'm seeing is like, I use this a lot for anticipatory sets and exit tickets. And sometimes when you have students look at each other's work, there's a hide names feature, and you have kids, I say you're doing a math lesson, and, you teach kids all these different strategies, how to solve it. And you get this kid who comes up with this way, and you want the other kids to explain their thinking. And now they're diving deep into something. And all you did was use this tool and you lay it out for them to play it out, kind of thing. And it sparks this discussion. And it also gives you this data that, like, if I know that some of my kids really didn't elaborate there, or they're not using enough details, or they're just kind of getting to it really quickly, or only 20% of my kids could answer this, then we might need to do some vocabulary work. So it guides your instruction.
Okay.
On that back end, where do we need to be? What do I need to do as a teacher? Where may I have missed something? And I think that's what makes it such a powerful tool. And it just goes back to Scott talking about when I was a kid, he let us collaborate and he let us talk and we had discussions. And I think that's what this platform is about. It's about the teacher really, like, giving the kids, like he said, those Lego pieces. And then all of a sudden, when you put it together, the students kind of start running the lesson, and it's not so teacher centered, right?
Yeah. I'm just going to add one more thing that I keep hearing come up that I think is important for, when it comes to my youngest child, right? So my youngest child has unique learning differences, as we all do. And okay. So here's my description of this. I love the technology that's out there, but like you said, Scott, idea that it serves one function, and then we have all of these sort of, we're trying to then take that one function, quiz, right? And now we're trying to expand that platform to make it something bigger. What you did was sort of, cast a wider net, right? In essence, and you're saying, hey, look, let's cast a wider net. Let's get it down to the essentials of what needs to happen. And let's really create a clean, nice space for teachers and kids to interact in one space. And I think what happens with a lot of the technology that's used is kids are paying the cognitive tax constantly for having to go to an interactive slide in which they have to click this to a hyperlink that takes you out and then takes you to another link to come back in to do the activity. And then, oh, by the way, I still have to turn it in, right, at some point. So think about that. I mean, we're asking, third and fourth and fifth graders to pay this cognitive tax. And I just feel like then we're asking them to engage with the content that we put out there. And I just feel like, all right, so to what end, right? Like, how long? And I think what you're describing in your platform is keep your lesson design as is, right? Use the tools that are here to amplify that thing. It's all in one space for you. And when kids start to get familiar with that, let's say we all know September in our classrooms. We get to this space in September, October, things are really starting to get into systems and habits and routines in our rooms. If this were introduced in a fun, collaborative way, as the platform, the tool, the whatever, and then you start to layer in that content, now kids are familiar with how we can utilize it. They're probably coming up with more innovative ways to use it than we ever probably dreamed up. And I just think there's something to be said for having it all in one place and housed there where students are, again, not having to pay that cognitive tax. Is that again part of your thought process and design process, or?
Yeah, spot on. It's what we've tried to solve is the fragmented experience that delays and disrupts what the teacher and students are trying to create in the learning space, which is exactly what you're speaking to. And the thing that we didn't really talk about that is really the game changer is we're trying to flip this idea of how the classroom is perceived, right? And it's difficult to really understand, but in many ways, I view ThinkTech is like closing the gap between teacher and student and creating trust, right? Because it is very difficult to say, I'm going to trust the kids to create the content that we're going to use for class today. It's not an easy thing for many folks to do, right? But what we do is we change the audience of who the work is done for. Traditional classroom, virtual classroom, in most cases, student is completing work to submit to teacher. And our platform, student is completing work to donate to the class. Everyone's going to see it. Everyone's going to engage with it. My name might be on it. My name might not be on it, right? But my work is going to be part of what we are doing and what we are trying to accomplish. And just that dynamic drastically changes how kids engage, when they engage, and how they interact with each other. And so we want more than anything, and this is where I think, is the most important piece about the future of teaching and education, is that when this pandemic is over, people are going to more than ever, teachers, administrators, families, students, are going to recognize that we can control what we can control. And the one thing that every single teacher can control, and the only thing that they can control, is the 40 minutes that they see those students in class on a daily basis. And when you maximize that time, a lot of the other stuff should take care of itself, right? And that time to me gets maximized by kids engaging, kids donating their thoughts and ideas, interacting with each other, interacting with their peers, conversation, right? They're the ones that are doing the talking. They're the ones that are doing all of the things necessary to engage with that, and they produce the content. And that's the world they're growing up in, right? They will leave school and go into a world that we didn't get the chance to grow up in, where they can monetize and capitalize on any ability they have by creating their own content and engaging in this new economy that has, really transformed, how people choose their profession, right? And I just think that it's critical to get kids accustomed and into that space where they know that their ideas and thoughts matter. They know how to interact respectfully with others' thoughts and ideas, and they know how to take their ideas, reflect on them compared to others, and determine the best path moving forward based on what they've just participated in. And that's what we're trying to create through many different tools and features that allow teachers to kind of take that and maneuver it and be flexible and simple throughout their class period.
Love that.
Amazing. I think that's about all we got. So again, one more time, where can people find you? What's the platform? I know we got it down below, but one more time, real quick.
Yep, they can go to just GoTHiNK and they can sign up for a free account there. They can check out the website, certainly learn more. We have a huge push coming out this weekend, so the website will update hopefully Monday morning, but we're launching our 8th application. So the next tool will be video. So almost similar to like a Flipgrid where kids can upload video from their phone to a larger space where kids can watch other videos and interact with their peers, and teachers will also be able to upload videos. Great for virtual and hybrid instruction. And we're launching a multi-page, essentially a notability or what's the other one? Not Cami, OneNote, I think, right, where teachers can upload whatever teaching. Right now, teachers need something in the moment for the second half of the school year that ends the fatigue, right? I need something to make this easier on me, right? With our platform, they literally drop in a PDF. They can upload a video from their camera. You could build a dynamite virtual lesson in 15 or 20 minutes that would knock the socks off anybody with these new features. And so those launch out this weekend. They'll update on the platform for Monday morning, and then it will update the website, and we'll be rocking and rolling here till the summer.
That's amazing. So students, so some of the updates that are coming are annotating on these tools and these PDFs as you're mentioning, right?
Yeah, you upload multi-page PDF. Kid gets a array of tools they can use: text box, images. They can upload. They can mark it up. They can submit it to teacher. Teacher can download it. Kids can view it. And then the eighth app will be video. Right? Kids can create a video based on the teacher's task, and then they submit it. Same concept to the space. They can watch other videos of their peers, interact with those, and then the teacher just builds the next piece. Now I want you to write about hey, you just watched all your class videos, pick which one you agree with the most and the one you disagree with, write about those and then check it. Boom. Right. And now they're on to the next task.
Before we go, I love this. I love this end question. This is the great one. So if you could leave just one message on a Post-it note for every educator, whether you have to put your admin hat back on, your teacher, whatever you got, what would it be? What would it say on that one Post-it note? I love that question.
I've got being a coach and in some of the pitch I've been, I've got, this Rolodex of quotes and motivational things that are spinning through my head. But, right now in the moment, all things given, right, where we are and what's transpired, I think that the sticky note that every teacher could probably use right now is a reminder that there is, no matter the circumstances, that there is always one more thing you can do to influence a situation in your favor. And probably more than just teachers could use that, but the idea that no matter where we are and where we're going and how dire it seems and how challenging it seems and how difficult it seems, there's always one more thing you can do to influence this in your favor, and then the tricky part is, and then there's one more thing and then one more thing. And you can always keep maneuvering a situation, and that's quite honestly what, probably the reason it popped in my head is that's, where I'm at personally, right? Up against, quite a challenge here, trying to bring something that's, such a large scale project to life and trying to, to sell in a very challenging time, right? But I refuse to accept that there's not one more thing we can do to influence this in our favor, because I know at the end of the day that we have something, and this is why I feel, the most blessed and fortunate is that, I get to wake up every day and work on something that I know ultimately, can change the human condition and make education a better place. And it's just a matter of time until that pops and becomes a reality. So that's probably my sticky note for self and others.
That's amazing. It's been great spending some time with you, Scott, and Andrew, obviously. We appreciate your time tonight, Scott. So thank you so much.
No, you guys have been great. Really enjoy listening to the show, and I look forward to listening to others. Right, it's a great outlet and a great opportunity for those that are passionate about the classroom to listen, hear, and have an opportunity to steal the best of what's out there from others. So keep it up. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott. We really appreciate it, man.
Okay, be good, fellas.